Don't waste your vote with Poilievre. He won't win. Vote for the People's Party. We will start that common sense revolution together.
Welcome to the Oracle by Polymarket. I'm Will Ward.
And I'm Mahdi Ali.
And today we're on with Maxime Bernier, who is the founder of the People's Party of Canada and former Minister of Foreign Affairs. Maxime, how are you doing?
Great. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very pleased to be with you.
So we're recording this on Thursday, and we have, of course, the Canadian election coming up on Monday. And I saw right before you came on, you tweeted out a article about the danger of Pierre Poilievre losing his own seat in Parliament in the election. Right now in Polymarket, we have a market for that's reading at 8%. Do you think the true odds are higher than 8?
You know, I don't follow, and I know all these pollings and survey during the election, and yes, Poilievre may be at risk. We never know. The real survey will be the one during the election. But what I can tell you, I'm not surprised that the Conservative Party of Canada is not that popular because they are not conservative. And what Poilievre is doing and what Poilievre did during this campaign is to speak like a liberal. He was a fake liberal. And now, the population has a choice, voting for the real one, Carney, or the fake one, Poilievre. And we know that Carney is winning in the polls right now. But, let's see what will happen Monday. And people cannot blame the PPC or me because Poilievre is a weak leader. He's not speaking about conservative values. And, I can go on a lot of issues that are the same as the liberals. So this election for me, it is a little bit sad because it was an election based on the tariffs and the trade war with Trump. And, it all started when my former boss, Prime Minister Harper, wrote a letter in the National Post, and he said, and we must know that Harper is the one who's advising Poilievre and the Conservative, and he said, oh, our country is in danger. We may not be a sovereign country anymore. Trump is serious with the 51st state. We must fight back. We must impose counter tariffs, dollar for dollar. And yes, it may hurt you, Canadians, but we must do that. And yes, that may create a recession, but that's okay. What Poilievre and Carney and Harper are telling us, this country is at risk of a big risk of not being independent anymore. We can have an invasion by Trump, or Trump can destroy our economy. We need to protect this country. That's why we need to impose counter tariffs, and maybe we'll create a recession. But the translation of that is, we love you, Canadians, so much that we will tax you more. And yes, you may lose your job because of a recession, but that's okay. We must not impose counter tariffs. That is a tax on Canadians. But Poilievre and Carney are okay with that, with the mainstream media. So they played the game against Trump. They didn't speak about the real issues for this country, like deficit, debt, mass immigration, woke ideology. And now, people their question ballot will be, who is the best one, Poilievre or Carney, to fight against Trump? We don't need to fight against Trump. We need to have a deal with Trump. Imposing counter tariff is a tax on us, and I believe that we'll be able to have a deal with Trump. Yes.
Let me ask you this. So I'm curious about how you read sort of like the national mood right now in Canada. I just had a visit. Someone visited me from Canada, a close family friend, and she was saying, I don't want to go out to the stores because I'm boycotting America. She was saying, her friends said, don't post on social media that you're visiting the U.S. There is just this very strong backlash and a desire to boycott, to have this, fight back against Trump and the tariffs. Do you think that mood is widespread, or is that just kind of an isolated thing?
No, I think it's widespread. Look at the survey right now in the polls, and it's there because of Poilievre and Carney and because of the mainstream media. The mainstream media did use fear and propaganda during COVID-19 to change the behavior of Canadians. And at that time, 65% of Canadians were saying it's okay to have lockdowns. It's okay to have stay-at-home orders. It's okay to have a curfew in Montreal. It's okay to not respect the Constitution and our rights. Now they're doing the same. The mainstream media with Poilievre and Carney are telling Canadians, you must boycott everything that is coming from the US. I can tell you that I won't boycott anything. Yes, I'm paying that a little bit higher and prices are going up. But for me, I will do what I want to do. And, if I have to pay higher prices for that, I will. It's because of our government.
Maxime, so what's the strategy with Trump? Is it complete capitulation? What if the demands keep going higher and higher and higher? What do you do with him?
Yeah, what do you do with first? You read his book, The Art of a Deal, and that's the way he's doing negotiation. Look what he did with European countries. He said, I will impose tariff, and after 48 hours, he said, okay, I will have a pause on 19 days. 19 days pause. Why? Because his end goal is to have a new deal with every country, and now they're coming back at the table and they are starting a negotiation. What we must do, we know that President Trump said during the campaign, his presidential campaign, he wants make America great again. He wants to repatriate the manufacturing sector in the US, and he's using tariffs to have a better deal with countries. And he said, if you impose a counter tariff, I will impose counter tariff, dollar for dollar, and I want to have reciprocal tariff. What we must do, no tariff, because the US is 10 times bigger than us. We won't win a trade war, and our tariffs are not, having any impact in the US because for a US exporters, the Canadian market is very small. So the impact on them is almost nothing, but the impact on us Canadians, it's huge with these new taxes. No tariff, reopen the free trade agreement right now and having a new deal. And to have a new deal, we need to say to President Trump, reciprocal tariff, we won't impose any tariff, zero tariff, and at the same time, we'll put everything on the table, including the cartel in dairy, poultry, and eggs. But Poilievre and Carney won't do that. They will protect the cartel. They are not working for Canada and for Canadians. And by doing that, we won't be able to have a trade deal with Trump.
Many Canadians that I are listening to say, look, we negotiated a trade deal with Trump in his first term, but he threw it in the trash. How can Canadians be assured that the same thing won't happen if there's another deal?
Yeah, no, you're right about that. That was President Trump. And when we signed that deal in 2018, he said it's the best deal ever. That's Trump. And now, he wants a new deal. But what he didn't like with that deal, and he told us during the first negotiation, is the fact that the dairy, poultry, and eggs producers cannot export these products to Canada. He was not happy with that. He signed that deal. And now he tweeted 3 times, and his secretary in charge of commerce said the same thing. They want a fair deal. They want to be able to export these products to the US. And us here in Canada, we have Carney and Poilievre who are saying no. So that's why he wants to reopen that deal. We must put that on the table. That will be good for Canadian consumers. Prices will go down. We are paying twice the price for these products. If you compare prices in the US, let's work for Canadian consumers, abolishing that, having a trade deal. That's why he wants to reopen the deal with Canada.
Maxime, you seem to suggest that, Poilievre has basically moved away from his populist messaging into a more centralist, globalist brand of politics, business as usual. But, his rating, I mean, we track it on Polymarket, right? So his ratings started to really go down when Trump started instituting the tariffs, right? And what you actually saw was a global turn away from the populist movements towards the more, call it traditional, centralist, globalist, call it whatever you like, but move towards the business as usual Obama era politics. And but you seem to be confident that the Canadians still want an actually stronger brand of populist politics. What makes you think that that's true when the entire world seems to be moving away from what we've seen over the last 8 years, and especially the last couple years post COVID-19?
Yeah, speaking about Poilievre, the mistake that he did during this campaign is to be with Carney with that trade war. The best thing to do is to inform Canadians and telling them that there's no advantages for us to do that trade war. But he played that game. So now, he stick with that. And people are looking to Carney to save them because they believe that this country is in danger of not existing in 5 or 10 years because of Trump. But that being said about the populist movement, no, I will disagree with that. Look in UK. You have Nigel Farage with the Reform Party. He created that party a year and a half before the general election in UK. He had only 15% of the vote. He was able to elect only 6 candidates. But now in the polls in UK, if there's a general election right now, he will be the prime minister. Look in France with Marine Le Pen. She's so popular that they use the court to be sure that she won't be a candidate for the presidential election in France. So in Germany, the populist movement is alive over there. And here in Canada, we are that populist movement. But it's a little bit more difficult for us to have a candidate elected because of the parliamentary system. But our time will come. And to do that populist revolution, you cannot do that in one election. We are there for the long term. And I
Sure.
believe that we can have our first candidate elected at this election.
Maxime, so in your view, is this populist movement primarily driven by economics or culture and immigration? Or is there
Great.
a third sort of outlet that you see?
Great question. I think by both. First, yes, the economy, every Western country, has huge debt. And the US and us in Canada, just to pay the interest of our debt, it's about $50 billion. $50 billion, it is what the federal government is giving to provinces for health care. So we cannot afford that. Huge debt in Canada, in US, in Europe. So yes, and because of that, we have inflation in these countries. People are poor. And add to that, the economy, yes, and add to that, the mass immigration. Mass immigration, is the main subject of these populist movement and us here in Canada. It is destroying our social fabric of our country. Our purchasing power is going down. You have more people coming to our country. The economy is growing, yes. The GDP is growing, yes. But, the GDP per capita is going down. And, the economic pie is growing, but our piece of the pie is smaller. If you look the last 10 years, our standard of living went down. So it's happening in Canada, it's happening in Europe. And so we may be in a recession right now.
Maxime, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it seems like the big elephant in the room that doesn't get addressed is the birth rates, and that seems to be a huge part of the immigration story. Is how do you maintain levels of productivity when we're well below the replacement level, right?
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
You're right about that. That is the excuse that the globalists and the Poilievre and Carney are telling us. We need more immigrants because the birth rate is going down and the population is aging. But it's not true. A study from Statistics Canada said that the average age of our immigrants are a little bit lower than Canadians, but not enough to have an impact on the aging of the population. Why? Because when you have an immigrant, you have here in Canada the reunification of family. The reunification of family, it is not only the dad, the mom, and the kids. It is the entire family. Uncle, brothers, sisters, grandmom, granddad. When they are coming to Canada, they are not participating to lower the aging of the aging of the population. So that's not happening in Canada. What we must do, we must stop mass immigration, moratorium on that, and for giving the best the best incentive for young couples to have kids. First, as you know, young couple are saying, I will want to have kids, but before that, I want to buy a house. They cannot buy a house because of mass immigration. Prices is going up. It's a question of supply and demand. Stop the demand, prices will go down. So what you need to do, you need to balance the budget in 1 year. You need to cut $50 billion, and we are able to do that. It is in our program. After that, you need to use all the surplus to lower taxes to every Canadians and young couples. They will have more money because it's very expensive to have a kid. They will have more money. We'll have a smaller government in Ottawa, and you'll have also no more mass immigration. We need to have policies that will promote kids like they have in Europe, maybe giving more money for the first kid and the second kid. Yes, we can do that. But right now we are broke. We don't have any money. We are spending too much. We need to balance the budget and be responsible, and we can do that in 1 year. And after that, yes, the lower taxes with surplus. I don't want like Carney and Poilievre, they're telling us they will lower our taxes, but with more debt and more deficit. That is the taxes of tomorrow and the inflations of tomorrow.
Have you spoken or met with President Trump recently? I've heard a theory going around that Trump secretly wants Carney to be in power, maybe sort of like a foil or easier to deal with. Do you believe that at all?
No, I don't. I don't. President Trump don't like, and he said it, Pierre Poilievre. Why? Because Poilievre is a conservative in name only, and he hates rhinos in the U.S., Republican in name only. The Republican Party was that before him, and now with Trump, it's not the case anymore. So if you're a Republican or a conservative, you must have conservative policies, and Poilievre don't. So it's why Poilievre is fake, like Tucker said when I did an interview with him. Poilievre is a sinister fraud, and he's not a conservative, so that's why Trump doesn't like him.
Beyond the trade issues, do you believe that Trump threatens Canadian sovereignty?
No, absolutely not. It's a fake patriotism coming from Carney and Poilievre. Trump wants to repatriate the manufacturing industry. What we need to do to keep our investment and our entrepreneurs and our businesses here is to be more competitive. For example, the corporate income tax in Canada, if you add the federal and the provincial one, it's 26.5%. The corporate income tax in the Western countries, it's 24%. And the corporate income tax in the US, it's lower than that. Trump said that he will lower that. So we need to be competitive. We need for our businesses to have a flat tax on business at 15%. Like that, our businesses and entrepreneurs will keep more of their profits. They will be able to invest to be more productive. They will be able to be competitive in the US market. We need to have a more competitive economy in Canada to fight against the US. That's the only solution. That's why balance the budget, lower taxes to businesses, and we need to abolish the capital gains tax. It's against wealth and creation of wealth in this country. If you do that, our businesses will be competitive not only in the US market, but in other markets also.
Let's talk about the secessionist movements in Quebec. What's going on there? Is that are those movements picking up steam nowadays, or have they quieted down?
The separatist movement in Quebec is alive. There's a young, charismatic leader for the PQ, and the PQ is ahead in the poll right now in Quebec. And why? Because of Trudeau, because of mass immigration. We have immigrants here in Quebec and in Canada who don't speak English or French, and they don't integrate into our society. And Quebecers, they want to protect the French language, they want to protect their culture, and they want to end mass immigration. And that leader of the PQ is speaking like me on immigration. He's the only one. That's why he's popular in the polls. And he's saying to Quebecers, the election at the provincial level will be in 2026. And he's telling Quebecers that if you vote for the PQ, it's a vote for a referendum. And I will do a referendum a year after being elected. So you have that separatist movement popular in Quebec and also in Alberta right now.
Maxime, if the separatists, uh, let's say the immigrants coming into Quebec were from the Ivory Coast or Algeria, where people speak French, would that quell the fears of these people, or is it deeper? Is it cultural, racial, however you want to look at it?
It's not only the language, it's cultural, actually, yes, but it's also the fact that the more people are coming here, we cannot afford that. Our standard of living is going down, so we need to have that pause on mass immigration, that moratorium. That's the only way to solve that, to save our Canadian culture and Quebec culture. So that's why you have that separatist movement in Quebec right now that is more popular than ever.
Hmm. I want to talk a little bit about NATO and where NATO. What does the future of NATO look like right now? Let's say Carney gets in, Poilievre. What is it? What is NATO?
Yeah, you're right about that. NATO was supposed to be to protect North America, but now NATO is an offensive organization like the war in Ukraine. As you know, I'm the only leader who is for peace and prosperity, and we said we must not participate in that war. It's not our wars, and Canada has a reputation of promoting peace and peacekeeping, and we sent $20 billion to Ukraine, and for Poilievre, it was not enough. And I'm with Trump on that. Trump tried to have a peace deal with Russia and Ukraine. That's the way to do. But that being said about NATO, we are pushing NATO, Western countries. We are pushing Ukraine to be part of NATO. That's a mistake. Ukraine must be neutral. And I'm questioning our role, Canada, in NATO. I believe that we must have a new security deal with the US. We must reinvest in our own defense. We must reinvest 2% of our GDP, and maybe having a special deal with the US to be sure that we protect North America. I don't want, to participate in these wars that NATO are doing right now. So I'm questioning our participation, but we need to have a new relationship with the US about our security and the security of North America for sure.
Let's say Trump gets everything he wants geopolitically. Let's say he gets Greenland, Panama Canal, parts of Canada becomes U.S. states. What does Canada look like geopolitically at that point? What does the world look like from the Canadian point of view?
Yeah, we will have a new geopolitical world right now. The US cannot dominate the world anymore with these huge deficit. They cannot afford that anymore. That's the end of the US dollar. That's why the gold is doing very well right now. And that's why, you may have a monetary reset. That being said, I believe that President Trump wants to control is the North America and the America. He won't invade Canada. He won't invade Greenland. He wants to have better. He wants to be sure that will be the U.S. who will dominate that part of the world. China is dominating another part of the world. Russia will be in Russia. So that's the new world order, and he wants to be sure and to say to everybody, it is North America. We need to control the Panama Canal, and he's controlling that right now. We need to be sure to the security of our country with Greenland and Canada they must reinvest there. And so I'm okay with that. That's only part of the negotiation again. That is Trump. And he is doing that to be sure to have the deal that he wants with Greenland and us, and he will.
What about the F-35 deal? We have a market right now on Polymarket. If Canada backs out of the F-35 deal right now, that's at about 10%. Do you think Carney would end up backing out of it if he becomes prime minister, or if he wins after the election, or what do you think should happen there?
I'm so tired to speak about that. When I was a conservative in 2006, that was the subject. And 20 years later, we are still speaking about that. Let's do the deal. Let's respect our deal that we had. We decided to choose these planes because they were the best one for us. So we must go ahead with that. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Why don't we let's turn to, so we have the election on Monday. We have a segment where we go through rapid fire markets on Polymarket and just get your opinion. What do you think if the odds are undervalued, overvalued? So right now, the overall election, we have Carney at 85% and Poilievre at 15%. What do you think the true odds there are?
I believe that we'll have a majority liberal government because of Poilievre, that he was not a conservative during that election. We didn't see the Poilievre when he was running for the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. He was speaking like me. He was speaking like a real conservative. But now he wanted to be prime minister, and he was doing poll and focus group. And it's because the population has been manipulated by the leftist media, is going to the left. And that's why I believe that he won't be able to win. And by saying that, I'm speaking to the conservative voters. Don't waste your vote with Poilievre. He won't win. Vote for the People's Party. We will start that common sense revolution together.
We have a market, Pierre Poilievre out as leader of the Conservatives in 2025. What do you think the odds of that are?
I think if he, the guy was 25% in advance before the election, a month before the election, and he was able to blow that out. And now, he may not win. So I know the conservative, they will push him to the door, and they will find a new leaders. And I want to speak about myself about that. I'm the only national politician, leader of a national party, that is putting my leadership at every election. At the last election, we asked our members if they want me to be the leader, yes or no. They said 96% of them said yes. After this election, I can tell you, we will ask our members, and if they want me to be the leader, if they don't want me to be the leader, I'll quit. If they want me to be the leader, I'll stay there. I have a leadership review at every election. Poilievre won't do that. That will be, the conservative who will try to push him. And I believe that they will be successful, maybe only in 2026, maybe not in 2025.
Will any country leave NATO in 2025? What do you think the odds are of that?
Yeah, I think, if you have a peace in Ukraine, maybe that can be us, our country, because like I said, I'm questioning that. We don't need NATO anymore. We need to have another deal, like I said, to protect North America. So I'll say the odds are maybe positive for that.
What about the Ukraine war? How do you think that winds up? We have Trump this morning calling on Putin to stop attacks. How do you see it going over the next 6 months?
It will stop because Ukraine lost the war. We'll have a peace agreement. Putin will be able to keep the territories that he has right now. And the other point is important for him is Ukraine must be a neutral country, and it will. It's a question of time. Putin, the media told us that he wants to conquer Europe and is the new Hitler. That was not true. These territories were under Russian jurisdiction or Soviet jurisdiction before, and the people living there are speaking Russia. They did a referendum a couple of years ago. They wanted to be with Russia, and Putin went back, conquered these territories, and the war will stop. And I believe that we'll have a peace deal this year. Yes.
What do you think the odds are Trump gets Greenland in 2025?
He won't. He won't. He will have a new security deal with them, but he won't. He won't, because for me, that is not his end goal.
Maxime Bernier, thank you so much for joining us. What message do you want to leave our viewers with? Where can people connect with you? And do you have any final thoughts as we approach the election on Monday?
Yeah, guys, I just want to thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a nice opportunity for me to be with you. As you know, the People's Party is canceled by the mainstream media, and still a lot of Canadians don't know that we exist. So I really appreciate that you gave me that time. That was great for me. Thank you very much. And my main message for Canadians, vote in line with your values, vote for what you believe, and these changes will have more chance to come. I know that I won't be prime minister after this election. But, we can be more influential. We can make history and having our first candidate elected. And that common sense populist revolution will come to Canada. If it's not at this election, that will be at the next one. So, this country is going in the wrong direction. We need to do this bold reform, and we are there for you. That's why we call this party the People's Party. And I hope that you'll go out and vote. The most important for me is to increase the participation vote. 40% of Canadians didn't vote at the last election. I hope that you'll go out there, you'll vote. I hope that our participation rate will be higher than that because, that's a democracy. You can express your point of view only one every 4 years or 2 years. So it's time to do it and go and vote Monday. Vote in line with your values, and we'll see what will happen.
Thank you, Maxime.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a nice day, guys.
Take care.
Bye.
Nothing in today's episode has been financial, investment, legal, or any other type of professional advice. Anything provided is for informational purposes only and is not meant to be an endorsement of any type of activity or any particular market or product. Terms of service on Polymarket.com prohibit U.S. persons and persons from certain other jurisdictions from using Polymarket to trade, although data and information is viewable globally.